Negative and zero exponents, lesson 4.4 notes, example number 1. Let's start with A. There's actually 2 ways to do these problems, and I'm going to show you both ways. To be honest with you, sometimes I like to do it one method, and then sometimes I like to do it the other method. It kind of depends on the problem. I'm going to show you both ways, and you can decide how you prefer to do it, and either way is fine. As long as you're getting the correct answer in the end, that's all that matters. Okay, so the first way I'm going to show you is maybe you don't want to work with negative exponents. Before you do anything, before you combine anything, you want to get all positive exponents. If that's the case, I'm going to put this over 1 because I have this term right here that has a negative exponent. And I want to make that exponent positive, so I'm going to move it to the denominator. It's in the numerator, so I'm going to move it to the denominator. So that means I'm going to have 2 to the second, this right here. I'm still going to have that in the numerator. And in the denominator, I'm going to have 2 to the 9th. Now that both exponents are positive, I can divide. It's a division problem, I can divide. Now, if you remember when we were doing division, I never once said cross out the term in the denominator and subtract the exponent from the numerator. I never said that. I always said always cross out the term that has the smaller exponent and subtract from the larger exponent. Cross out the term that has the smaller exponent and subtract from the larger exponent. In other words, 2 to the second has the smaller exponent. So I'm going to completely cross that out. And the 9 on the bottom, well, 9 minus 2 is 7. Now, notice how there's nothing on top? When you cancel everything out in the numerator, you have to put a 1. So if I rewrite this, it would look like 1 over 2 to the 7th. So let me show you the other way of doing this. All right, the other way might be, well, this is multiplication, so we could go ahead and multiply right away. And if you multiply, you're supposed to add exponents. So this would look like 2 to the negative 9 plus 2. Negative 9 plus 2 is negative 7. Well, once again, we don't want a negative exponent, so we want to make this positive. So this looks like this x to the negative c up above. I'm going to put it over 1. And then I'm going to take the reciprocal, I'm going to flip it. So I'm going to move it to the denominator. So it will look like 1 over 2 to the 7th. Notice how it's the same thing. All right. Which way is easier? Well, in this case, maybe the way on the right is easier. I'm not, to each their own. So, but whatever you want to do is fine with me, as long as you understand that you want to make sure your exponents are positive. We're not quite done here because the base is a number and not a variable. We're going to go one step farther and find 2 to the 7th. And 2 to the 7th is 128. So this would be 1 over 128. I'm going to write it like this. And I'm going to just box everything. So one more time. I took the negative exponent and moved it to the denominator to make it positive. And then I divided. I divided by crossing out the term with the smaller exponent and subtracting from the larger exponent. The other way I did it was, well, it's multiplication, and when we multiply, we add exponents. Negative 9 plus 2 is negative 7. But then I had this negative exponent, so I moved it to the denominator to make it a positive 7. Either way, I get the same answer. So let's look at B. Same thing for B. Go ahead and put it over 1. I've got this term right here that has the negative exponent. So I'm going to move that to the denominator. Anything that has a positive exponent stays where it is. If it has a positive exponent, don't move it. So in other words, the 3 to the third would stay in the numerator, and the 3 to the negative 7 would move to the denominator, and the 7 would become positive. Now I'm ready to divide. I cross out the term with the smaller exponent. And the reason why this is, that would be like having, you don't have to write this down, just follow along. There'd be 3 3s on top, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 3s on the bottom. And then, they would cancel, they would cancel, they would cancel. So what's left? 4 3s on the bottom. Nothing's on top, so you would put a 1. All right. So going back to this, I completely cross out the 3 to the third, and then subtract 7 minus 3 is 4. So this would then be a 1 on top, because there's nothing left on top. So I would have 1 over 3 to the fourth. That's one way of doing it. Let's look at the other way. Since it's multiplication, let's add the exponents. So I'm going to add those exponents. So this would be 3 to the 3 plus negative 7, which is the same as 3 minus 7. And since the signs are different, subtract, keep the sign of the larger number. That would be 3 to the negative 4. Well, I can't have a negative exponent, so I'm going to take that and move it to the denominator. So this would be 1 over 3 to the fourth. And notice again, we got the same thing. All right, and 3 to the fourth is 81. So my final answer would be, oops, one more try, 1 over 81. I can box all 3 of these. Again, you choose which way you would prefer to do it. All right, for C. Okay, in this case, notice how both exponents are negative. So that means I'm going to take both of these and move them to the denominator to make them positive. Put my 1 on the bottom. So this would move, and this would move. Well, because both would move to the denominator, that means there's nothing left on the top. And when there's nothing left on the top, we need a 1. So now this would be 5 to the first times 5 to the second. Now, if you remember, when we multiply, you add exponents. When multiplying, we add exponents. Even though this is a fraction and it looks like a division problem, because both 5 to the first and 5 to the second are in the denominator, they're being multiplied, I'm going to actually add those exponents together. So this would simplify to 1 over 1 plus 2 would be 5 to the third. All right, that's one way of doing it. The other way would be to add these exponents. So 5 to the negative 1 plus negative 2. Those, excuse me, those signs are the same, so I'm going to add and keep the sign. That would be 5 to the negative 3. Well, I've got a negative exponent. I need to make it positive. So I'm going to move that to the denominator. So this would be 1 over 5 to the third. 5 to the third is 125, so my final answer is 1 over 125. All right. If you have any questions on those 3 problems, please do not hesitate to ask. I know this can be confusing. Just remember, you want to work with positive exponents. So if it's the negative exponent is in the numerator, move it to the denominator. If it's in the denominator, move that term to the numerator to make the exponent positive. Please make sure you have everything written down. If you have any questions, let me know.